Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. I'm your host, Terrence. I serve as the family pastor at FCBC Walnuts in La La Land, so go Dodgers and Lakers. Joining me today are two good friends who are pastor practitioners who are always working on their craft and being transformed by the Holy Spirit in their character. We are getting close to the Rooted Conference in Chicago this October, by the way. So please, both of you, tell the listeners more about yourselves and one thing that you're looking forward to at Rooted. And I'll start with Justin.
Hey everybody, I'm Justin Wong from Houston, Texas. Been in youth ministry for a good bit. I am looking forward to, reuniting with my friends. It's been a tough year and there's been a lot of things going on this year. I just think I need a hug. I think I need some physical affection from my buddies. But I'm also looking forward to the workshops. Vince is doing one on great leaders. Andrea's doing one on teenagers and body image. Clark is doing one on the necessity of youth ministry. So there's gonna be a lot of great workshop topics that will be at Rooted. So I am totally looking forward to that, as should you.
Wait, hold on a second. You can't exactly go there without disclosing the workshop that you yourself are teaching, Justin. Tell us about that.
I am teaching whatever Dorothy will allow me to teach.
What?
Dorothy, no, just kidding. I'm doing one on church, why teens should go to church. I mean, it's been my hobby horse for the greater part of a decade, so I'm looking forward to teaching that. So it'll be fun.
I can imagine I'm already going to be running AV for your workshop, yeah.
I hope so. We make a great team, man.
If you're lucky, Justin, if you're lucky.
Yeah, I know.
Hi everyone, I'm Dorothy and I am the youth director at the Chinese Bible Church of Maryland in Rockville, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. And I've been here for about 7 years almost, been in youth ministry since 2010-ish. I am most looking forward to Rooted in that it's going to be in my home state of Illinois. And this is just, a little tidbit of info. We say it's in Chicago, but it's actually in Lake Forest, which is 40 miles north of Chicago. So if you plan on spending some time in this city, maybe budget a couple of days before or after the Rooted Conference and fly in and out of O'Hare or Midway. Yeah.
Can we book a private tour with you? You'll show us around and stuff?
If you really want to, I have a food tour list of things that are chain and then there are things that are in the city. But I do have a friend who I know from youth group growing up. He opened his own boba shop and steep the teas. There's no powder nonsense and stuff. So free promo, Gathers Tea Bar in Westtown. Yep, you'll thank me later.
All right. Promises, Dorothy.
Might as well fly out of Midway then.
All right.
Nice. There's a lot of good advice here. For me, I am looking forward to gathering with you guys, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome in Chicago. But also, I'm looking forward to our Asian American pre-conference, which happens before the full conference. And it's got a little hidden secret there, but it's where we gather together, we see one another, and so much of the friendships and conversations that go on for the week begins right there, where we're in tables, where we're listening to each other and learning from each other and just encouraging one another. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, low-key, Terrence, I'll admit that when I first attended the Rooted Conference in 2021,
With me?
Yes, and that's where we met. I was just like, all right, the Asian American pre-conference is basically who are the Asians who are at this joint, and I'm going to hang out with them for the rest of the conferences. So that could be you.
Yeah, we sell this real well. All right. Well, this month's podcast pair addresses the summer swing that takes place every year in youth ministry. This episode is the second, and we will go into greater detail about back-to-school preparation and priorities. Please check out the previous episode for our musings on activities and camps and retreats to make the most of this season. So then I want to start with Dorothy. Please give me your top 3 tasks when you think about back to school.
When I think about back to school, top 3 tasks. This is strictly ministry or in general?
Whatever you would like to say.
So one thing is supplies, as there are back to school sales, particularly Target or Walmart or Dollar Tree, whatever. Now's the time to replenish on your stock of, pens or Post-its, Sharpies of all calibers. So things that you'll need for the ministry as it relates to maybe Operation Christmas Child, if your church does that, if it's for camps and retreats or in between, or just general keeping it in your admin or like supplies bin box that you have for your youth ministry. So checking your supplies. A second task I think about is our email list. And since email is our primary means of communication for both students and parents, even if students are sometimes reluctant to give up their email. They sign up for every other game app, so I don't know what the big deal is. But anyways, have them, offer up their primary email and emergency contacts. So just in case anything happens in the ministry, the students are the first to know, as are their parents. Or if anything happens while they're in the ministry, we can contact the parents. So having good methods of communication that are accurate and updated is important. So supplies, contact info, and third, the big task, whether it's gearing up for or in the process of going through the beginning of the school year, I try to make it my goal to know every student's name, grade, and school so that just in case we start to receive new students, I know how to connect them with different persons within the ministry. And I think that does help to create a culture of hospitality eventually, in that while conversation might start more superficial or shallow or in factual things, it helps to establish some point of connection for our students. And so going back to school is, like, oh, this is my grade, this is my school, this is my name. And once we get past those very simple defining terms, then it's little by little helping to develop a more substantive connection relationship.
Good.
Yeah.
So I think for me, what I'll try to do is if we're able to do a kind of an inventory or a get to know you card, one of my first tasks in the beginning of the year is to take all of the info and input it into my personal Google account. And so every kid's birthday, cell phone, social media handle. And then we always ask like fun stuff like what's your favorite candy or color or whatever, just so to make it more personal. So I try to go through every single student on my directory. What that way, not only will their birthday pop up during the school year, but I'm able to pray for them as I input certain things. And I think one tip is you do realize even if a kid has been part of your youth group for 6, 7 years, they may be going through something different this next year. Like you have no clue, right? So you want to be able to pray for them because they're not the same as they were last year. So I try to update my Google accounts. Another thing that I try to do at the beginning of the year is to kind of give parents kind of a budget that they could expect for the new school year. So this is how much we plan on charging for retreats or lock-ins or whatever else throughout the year. So just so they have an estimate of how much youth ministry might cost for the whole year, so that they're not like blindsided by certain things, especially if they have more than 2 kids or 3 kids at the house. They can budget, but then also they know when to ask for scholarships. And so I found that parents are very, very grateful when you give them kind of it's not tuition, but it's like estimates, right? So they can kind of work with you. The last one for me is housekeeping. It's I always renew or update our passwords on the youth ministry accounts. So our Google, Instagram, Spotify, because I don't know who has the passwords from last year, and I want to make sure that all of our privacy settings are kind of at check and given to the right proper people. So we always renew our passwords at the beginning of the year, and I only give out the passwords to those who need to know. So that's kind of housekeeping stuff. And
Dude, I love it, man. This is like such a treasure trove of detail and information to prepare for back to school. You can tell that the seasoned minds that you guys have and experiences that's so helpful. What I would add to this is a good time, in addition to informing parents of financial costs and other calendar related items, to just be able to orient and connect the parents to what is happening during the school year with the students. So not to kind of think of them as, something that you have to take care of as things come up, or a group of people that you're supposed to inform throughout the year, but to prioritize them as much as you can, maybe in partnership with others at your church, so that you're including them and allowing them to already start brainstorming and dreaming about what this year may look like for their homes and also for their families. That would be wonderful. So as intentional as you can be, like our schools often are in our communities, I think that would be really helpful for our parents as well. Let me ask you a follow-up question to this, because again, I feel like when you hear this wisdom, it's light bulbs go on everywhere. But then, for some of us, and it's understandable, whether it's in our churches or just in where we are at in ministry experience or new settings or our roles, it adds on a lot of responsibility and maybe burdens that leads, to anxiety and worry that is just normal to us when there's a lot ahead of us and a lot of responsibility. If I could just ask you to share, kind of honestly and personally, I mean, what is something you worry about every single year as you enter into this back to school phase and then come out of it to begin the school year? What is something that you might get anxious about, and maybe, what would you like to grow in and do better in yourselves?
Mm.
And for this, just feel free to take your time on it. But I'd love for this to be an opportunity for us to have some introspection, to the pastor practitioner rather than only on the things that we are called to do. And so with that, I'm gonna start with Justin.
Yeah, I always at the beginning, I'm always trying to figure out what are the potential gaps between not in the youth ministry, but the youth ministry to the other parts of the church,
Mm.
right? What are the misunderstandings? What are the potential misalignments, or what are the kind of perceived things that I'll have to work from, right? Because I think, especially working in an Asian American church, there's multiple layers of gaps, right? You have the intercultural one, intergenerational one, even staffing. There might be kind of misalignments and stuff. And so I'm always a little bit like, man, I wonder what holes do I need to plug in fast? And then what are some things I could take my time in? And so um, that one stresses me out, especially if you kind of have a leadership culture of kind of where everyone's distant and you don't really know one another. I know hopefully your staff isn't like that, but I know some staff that's a struggle sometimes. The youth minister is usually on an island. And so how do you kind of mitigate some of those things early on in the year so that you're not fighting an uphill battle all year long, right? Because it wears on me, like when I'm trying to get things approved, or have to repeat myself multiple times of like, "Hey, how come you didn't tell us this event was there?" And I'm like, "It's on my calendar. I try to share with you. I'm not hiding anything." And so, trying to work the cultural angle has been tough the last, 5, 10 years. And so, um, what I like to do better, I I think a couple years ago, I would have just said, like, just be more transparent, just like write things down. I don't think that was the hard issue of a lot of the disagreements inside of the leadership. I think it was actually forming the relationships. So I think looking back, I think that's something I could have done much better. And again, my excuse would have been, well, it's not reciprocal, and it's not coming from people who should know better, right? Like, why are you asking me to take the initiative of starting the relationship of, working this out when you're kind of the elder statesperson, or you're the older one who should be mentoring? I'm wondering if I could have done better in terms of, could I have asked that person out for coffee, or could I have asked that person out for lunch or dinner way before kind of the problems have started? So I think I could have taken a lot more initiative in that case. So um, just to kind of start the year well, and then we tackle the issues as they come versus having it fester and build.
Man, that's such an important angle because I mean, we could do, the best that we can and be prepared and communicate as clearly as we can, but we are still part of a larger church, and there's so much that we're called to do to really build bridges and communicate with each other.
I
Yeah,
mean,
thanks for sharing that.
if I can encourage younger youth ministers, I think the tendency, especially the first 3, 5 years, is to just focus down into your youth ministry. While you should do as hard of a job and hard of a work as you can. But I think the more important thing is to build a culture in your leadership that fosters transparency and vulnerability and warmth. I think because that will last you longer. That will outlast your youth ministry. And so take it from someone like me. Wish I could have done something different. So.
We are thrilled to announce Rooted's new book with New Growth Press, The Jesus I Wish I Knew in High School, Asian American Edition. Being a teenager is itself an overwhelming experience, but the struggles unique to Asian American teenagers can often lead them to wonder if anyone truly knows what they're going through. In this book, 12 authors come alongside Asian American students to share their own high school experiences, helping students to see how Jesus makes a difference in our unique struggles. Jesus sees them and knows them fully. These testimonies of growing up Asian American include struggles with belonging, performance pressure, fear of failure, living in an honor-shame culture, eating disorders, sexual assault, and adoption. The writers now walk faithfully with Jesus in their ethnic and cultural distinctions. These stories lift up the Asian American experience with dignity, offering representation and belonging. We hope you'll read this book and share it with the Asian American teenagers in your home or church.
I don't know if I've actually thought about this question as extensively until now. And particularly from behavioral patterns that I've noticed out of kids who were in elementary school during COVID and or started different stages of life during COVID, the maturity levels are vastly different. So to more directly answer the question, right, of like, what is something that I worry about every year? As we receive, in my ministry, youth ministry is grades 6 through 12. So it's middle and high school. And so a concern that I have every year is now, post-COVID, is the maturity or lack of maturity level of our incoming sixth graders going to be a deterrent for our high schoolers to stay in the ministry? That's probably one of the biggest concerns that I have now, because I have seen where, while pre-COVID, at this point, those numbers are fairly irrelevant and kids have a lot of different activities. I have seen that there is a slight shrinkage of our high school retention. In part, we do see that there are more middle schoolers, which I'm grateful for, but I do notice how their attitudes or their general inability to I guess to read the room, right, and to strive and be reminded of maturity in different aspects. I can tell our high schoolers are getting visibly annoyed with and less patient with our younger students, and so I I sometimes worry that I'm losing my older high schoolers because they're just fed up with the childish or adolescence of our younger students, and um, because our ministry does hinge on the presence of older students, I I don't want to see the ministry shrink back to a level where like we just have basically a middle school ministry for our church and a handful of high schoolers. So that's one thing, right? But something that I would like to do better for sure is it's not even about the students. It's the intercession that's necessary in the background. If it was at all possible to like create a support group among parents, and simultaneously like having prayer for our students, like as our students are in youth group from like 8 to 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night, would it be possible to implement or to um, entrust a couple of parents or families to start having like a rotation of prayer groups in that same duration? And then they can also have it be like um, fellowship and prayer for the ministry for each other. So I think that's something where, speaking to Justin's point, building those relationships, not just between students, but it's also between the families, because I do notice that the students who are generally more consistent and stronger in their faith, they take after parents who have modeled that effectively in the home.
Right.
And I think it would be so advantageous and spiritually encouraging where were these families or, sets of guardians and parents to come together to pray not just for our students, but also for each other and to build those connections amongst the families within our ministries.
Yeah, I hear both of your hearts. I mean, I feel like, what you're describing as your worries, but then also ways in which you would like to do better, relates to actually how the students themselves are doing.
Hmm.
I mean, we could program all we want. We could calendar and plan rightfully, clearly and diligently every year as we should. But at the end of the day, we're trusting these students to be in God's hands and that we have a role in their lives to build them up, encourage them, point them to Jesus, but we can't control them, nor can a program contain them. Um, how do you see the church, especially since that's the theme of the conference for this year? I mean, how do you see the church as needing to step up in ways or, to change and grow in ways so that we're mindful of the students that are in our midst and in our ministries and are caring for them and looking out for them?
How like the overall church can do that?
Yeah.
Man, that's like that's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Especially since ministries are siloed in ethnic churches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so I just wrote on this, right? What we're seeing over here is I think there's a gap. There's a lot of gaps between first gen understanding and second gen understanding.
Mm,
First gen Christian understanding and second gen Christian understanding. I think now with the advent of podcasts and YouTube and the internet in general,
mm,
right? I think students and college students, young adults, they've been fed with a fairly healthy diet if they choose of like very strong gospel centric material, right? They have access to all of these things that the internet could afford them. And I think some of the older generations who aren't keeping up, just even in the theological rigor, I think that it's starting to have a massive gap between these type of things. And so in one sense, it's just be like, hey, let's continue to learn together as a church and not to be stagnant, right? I think you have all these condemnations from the seven churches, seven letters in the churches in Revelation. And I think those don't apply. Everyone wants to be like, well, the warnings are for other people, right? And I think the the ethnic churches, I would say we need to do better on that, right? It's not just, oh, hey, we're good. We've established ourselves in this culture. We're okay. We can coast, right? And I think the church as a whole needs to continue to grow and develop, and to be willing to be sanctified, right? Um, we can go on for a long time, Dorothy, you and I, about that, but I think a healthy church helps a healthy youth ministry.
hmm
There's no doubt about it. And when the older generations or I guess, I say older, I'm talking about the 30, 40-year-olds too, when they start to be complacent and when they start to kind of go, hey, it's everyone else's fault, I think that's when the church starts to die.
It's a scary thing to think about too, because like as it has been said, the church is always a generation away from extinction. And particularly in ethnic churches, I do believe that worry or that concern is even more pronounced because literally your young people don't have to stay in an ethnic church because they can go and look for an English service literally anywhere in the country
Yeah.
or in your locality. And so the fact is that if you have persons who want to stay in an ethnic church and they want to, love their church well, then it's important to have some of those hard conversations in the goal and vision and desire, yes, to be faithful to the gospel and to unto the Lord, but also towards being a healthier church. I think sometimes it's unfortunate that even having grown up in an immigrant church, it's like we're so used to being in survival mode, or like we're so used to there being some type of drama. It's as if we have to create drama to feel like there's normalcy, right?
Right.
I think for a lot of our churches, one thing that we can strive to be better in is like how do we love each other well,
Yeah.
and not just through acts of service, not just through giving unsolicited advice or passing the baton when you've never taught a person how to run. It's like, how do we love you well and also have good and necessary conversations of what it looks like to mutually care for our church, even if stylistically it could be different.
Right.
And so, what it looks like to be a healthy church, I think first we have to address that maybe us as leaders might not be in a healthy state, and we need to um, have that point of reflection and then move more towards, like, okay, Lord, how are you wanting to grow me, refine me, and purify me? As Justin says, sanctify, right? How do we become more like Jesus in the process of loving each other more
Yeah.
and well?
Praise the Lord. The Youth Ministry Unscripted podcast is the rebranded version of the Rooted Youth Ministry podcast. In Youth Ministry Unscripted, we talk real, honest, and raw about youth ministry. The Youth Ministry Unscripted podcast aims to advance gospel centered youth ministry by equipping and empowering youth ministers and parents to faithfully disciple students toward lifelong faith in Jesus.
I mean, I think the sobering reality is no local church is going to last forever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have, and again, I'm trying to honor the past and honor the sacrifice that the first gen had to go through, right, with no resources.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, not be so arrogant, right, or so prideful to think that, oh, we'll last forever, and use our budget or our surplus to justify that, hey, we can coast or we can do these type of things. It's, I think there has to be this sobering reality that um, life is a vapor, right? Our efforts are all for naught if the Lord doesn't continue to do things. And I think the Lord's MO has always been to use the weak and the fragile to grow his kingdom. Like, that's just gospel principles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we lose sight of that or we become arrogant after one or two generations, then I think there's hopefully good discipline that's coming our way, right?
Mm.
And we would be foolish children to reject that type of discipline for the sake of securing our own name or whatever, and at the expense of the students. And I think, I think this is such it's a hard topic, right? I don't know if you're headed that way, Terrence, but I think as we're thinking through students and youth ministry, we have to be able to think holistically.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to start from the health of the church, because the health of the church determines the health of the youth ministry. And us as youth ministers, we can't just stay in our youth ministry little bubble. We got to contend for the faith
Mm-hmm.
of all the saints and not just the students. So that's a challenge to you younger youth ministers. That's a burden that I don't think is going to be on your job description. But you have to be able to understand
Yeah.
the reality of ministering as a minister, right? Of any sort. So
I will say it's even more challenging, particularly for some of our brothers or sisters who may be ministering in an ethnic church, whereas like they are not of the majority culture within that church. Meaning, like, if you are a black or white or Hispanic who is ministering in an Asian congregation, for sure, it's a huge shell and culture shock. But I also respect um how earnest one can be in being in those settings. And it does take a lot of learning, familiarity with the culture, and in trying to understand where people are. But it does have its own challenges. But there's a kind of resilience, Justin, as you said, to honor the those who have gone before us. There's a kind of resilience that occurs in the older generations that I don't know if I will ever really have.
yeah.
Um, but I also don't want to pride myself on being sacrificial or unnecessarily resilient when I sometimes may put myself in situations that don't require it. Um, uh, but there's always something to be gained and gleaned from each generation. And kind of anchoring this back to like in this back to school mentality is as we are considering not just a new school year, is like, where is the support or what kind of support do we have amongst our leaders for our youth? And then how do we permeate and also spread that around with the church so that the youth ministry is not kept to its own sector or silo, but that eventually there are other older brothers and sisters in the church who value the youth, not just the youth, the sake of having a youth ministry, but actually value the people, the students in the youth ministry to maybe mentor, to disciple, to be a co-discussion leader, to help with worship team and training of students, right? I think there's always a place for the wider church to be invested in our students, but sometimes we as youth pastors we have to identify and state those needs so that maybe when we offer them up, persons within our congregations or our churches may already sense the Lord's leading to respond to those needs.
And I know our audience is mainly those who work within youth ministry. But I mean, I think part of the challenging reality is sometimes, especially ethnic churches, they feel like, well, we'll give airtime to students, and that'll be equivalent to students are part of this church, right? Where what I think we're trying to advocate here is, hold on, the students are as much a part of the church as everybody else. There's a whole difference, because I think the tendency in a lot of immigrant churches is we'll use students for their labor or for their time and efforts. And I'm going, hey, that's a difference. I think the students can smell that out. And it cuts both ways, though. I mean, I think the students have to be able, those who are members of the church have to understand what membership looks like, but then the rest of the church has to be able to receive students as members as well. And I would say as neighbors, right? I mean, on equal footing, not just some kind of junior varsity member of the church. And so
Yeah.
that takes a lot of pastoral wisdom and discernment, timing and tone really matters, especially in the immigrant congregation. And so, but for you guys who are student ministers, like, that's in the background on top of everything you have to do, right? And so you are advocating not just for student ministry, but for comprehensive church membership at some level, right? And I think your students will not have that voice unless you train your people to be able to understand that as well.
And I love you guys sharing from the heart. I mean, you can see that, this call to youth ministry is not just for a job or a position, but it's a call to shepherd and to steward, not just numbers and dollars, but actually people and individuals made in God's image that God has given to us. So thank you guys for sharing that. And if you want to hear more about what Justin has to say, you should go to his workshop. You should come to the Rooted conference. And to find out more about that and register, go to our website, rootedministry.com, and click the conference button. And you can also be a part of what's happening there in Dorothy's very own Windy City. So to close this episode, I'd like to ask the two of you to share one encouragement to the youth minister, so that in light of everything that has been shared, and maybe some of the things that we continue to wrestle with and gnaw upon after this episode, how can we start the school year strong? And with that, I'm going to start with Dorothy.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot to be said about making sure you have accountability. Because the reason I say that, as much as I always want to initiate the start of the school year with, good footing or some great icebreakers and help students feel comfortable to an extent or at ease and being in fellowship together again, I think it's very, very vital for us and for our leaders to be accountable for each other. We're not just showing up to do the work or the ministry labor, but like build in regular gatherings with your volunteers that is not just centered on the act of talking about ministry, but again, to love each other well and to spend time with those who are spending time with the teens. So caring for your volunteers essentially. And while, not every team's going to look like, we're all friends and we love each other. I think it's still important that our volunteers are cared for because they are, doing this out of their free time, out of their commitment to their church. But I think in the process of caring for our volunteers, we, may be able to start to develop friendships in the process. And the last thing I would want is for any youth pastor to feel like he or she is isolated from being accountable or having accountability, let alone having friends, especially in that church. And I think there's such a huge value in cultivating those relationships, yes, with students, but also with those with whom you serve, because you can trust, Lord willing, you can trust them and they can trust you. And it's not about outlining someone's failure or overlooking someone's wins, but it's like, how do we really set an example for our students in what it looks like to be part of healthy community and have healthy friendships as we serve together, as we do life together? So I'd say, yeah, like for sure, care for your volunteers as much as like caring for being accountable for each other. Because when we are ministering to students, we ourselves also need to come from a place of health, not unhealth. And if it's the latter, the students will actually see that more clearly, and it can actually become a stumbling block more than something that will help their faith.
I would say, as a way of encouragement to the youth pastor director, um, don't forget the role and responsibility that we're tasked with, right? I mean, if this is real, and that's obviously, um, this is one of the greatest things that you can do. I mean, like,
Mm,
don't lose out on that. I think we can. I love logistics. I love planning. I actually enjoy like competent meetings. I do. But like we can't forget, like this is the work of the Holy Spirit that He has invited
mhm,
us to join in, and never discount what the Lord might be able to do. I mean,
mm,
who knows, and so I would say at the very beginning of the year, just if you're seeking his kingdom, then ask in his name, and believe, right? Like, hey, what do you want the Lord to do to you, to your leaders, to your students, to your
mm,
parents? What are some wishes? Sometimes we just go in thinking, oh, we're just going to do this on our own strength. And sometimes our heavenly Father wants to give us good gifts, and we just forget to ask, and so we don't expect much, and that's why James says we don't get, because we don't ask. And so I wonder how often we miss out on opportunities of blessing and even just seeing miraculous things in our midst because we rely too much on ourselves. And so just
mm,
don't forget that aspect, guys. Like, this is the part that should make every year more refreshing, because it's a new year. Like, you have no clue what's going to happen. And if you think about the gospel, we're not held to the past failures or even successes. And we want to press on towards the upward call that which he has called us to. And so while we have the time, and while you guys have the time and ability to do ministry in this context, please take it from us. Don't don't neglect it. You never know how much time you have, right? And so enjoy your time there. Use it well, and expect the Lord to move. I think this is the business that we get to do, and it's not a business. It's awesome, right? It's a calling that we get to step into. So
Yeah, that's a great word. Well, thank you all for listening today to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. We look forward to the next time we chat. Until then, may the Lord bless and keep you as we trust in the death and resurrection of Christ to transform our homes and churches. Be sure to follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at The Rooted Ministry. We all hope to see you in Chicago. Talk to you soon.
yeah.
later.